Now, joining me first of all this evening is the editor of Spiked Magazine Tom Slater, who recently wrote an article titled Why They Hate Cars. Now, Tom says the green elites have no idea how most people live. I mean, Tom, let's start off by asking that simple question. I mean, how many of us are actually using our cars over public transport? It's a shocking number, isn't it?
It is, and this is one thing that never figures in the debate, Darren, is it? So according to official government statistics, in the last year that we have numbers for, 2021, it was 88% of all passenger kilometres travelled in the UK were in a car. That could be a personal car, that could be a taxi. And yet you would think that vast numbers of people were cycling, were taking public transport. I think so much of this is a reflection, as in so many other issues, that the people who make decisions, the people who write about policy in this country, are quite unusual, and they all live in one area, namely London, which does have pretty good public transport, though it could be better, and is an outlier, even amongst many English cities, in terms of people relying more to a greater extent on public transport than cars. And I think that's one thing that which just colours the entire debate, is that this agitation with cars, this disregard of people's concerns about ULEZ or low traffic neighbourhoods or anything else, is because it doesn't affect the people who are introducing these policies, and it doesn't affect the people who are cheerleading for them. And I think if they just got out of their bubble, they would start to realise why people are so upset by these things.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of that bubble then, Sadiq Khan says he's not prepared to step back, delay or water down ULEZ, which he says is going to save lives and protect children's lungs. You know, very, very strong rhetoric there. But when we look at air pollution, though, over the last 50 years, the trajectory has actually been going down, without drivers being coerced in. We've got a graph there for our radio listeners. Down without drivers actually being coerced into paying, what is it, £12.50 every time they go for a spin. I mean, Tom, what do you think ultimately actually explains the motives behind this? Do you actually believe that it's purely down to air pollution?
I don't think it's purely down to air pollution for the reason that you suggest. This is not a burgeoning public health issue in the way that Sadiq Khan likes to pretend it is. I think that probably the more generous argument is that Sadiq Khan is very wrapped up in any kind of moral crusade going. He likes the green issue. He likes anything that he can really virtue signal on, and that's one part of it. The other part of it, which I don't mean to sound too cynical when I say this, is that it's a pretty good money raiser if you're charging people £12.50 a day. And of course, we're not just talking about people who live in London as well. And this is one of the big problems with expanding ULEZ to the outer suburban London boroughs, is there's a lot of people who drive in and out of Greater London every single day without even necessarily thinking about it. So that's a very wide pool of people, including people who won't have any access to these scrappage schemes and so on. So I think it's a combination of both, Darren. There is a lot of political capital, particularly for left of centre politicians, to just jump in with both feet on the green agenda for whatever reason they see it as a road to virtue, even if it ends up punishing working class people as a consequence. But the flip side of it is the fact that it's a pretty good earner for the London mayoralty at a time when they do need that money.
On that point then, results that we saw quite recently actually with the Uxbridge and South Ruislip by-election. Do you think actually this is going to be repeated, Tom, where actually politicians pushing policies that will ultimately make voters potentially colder and poorer is going to see them punished at the ballot box, whereas actually I think the narrative thus far has been that, you know, go green and hug a husky is very much a vote-winning narrative?
I find that so ridiculous. You know, I mean, if you ask people in the abstract, are they in favour of cycling or walking, or are they in favour of net zero? They say, yeah, that sounds like a nice idea. But as soon as you ask them, would you want to give up your car? Or as soon as you ask them, are you willing to pare back your lifestyle or pay more for this? They all understandably say no. People don't expect politicians to make their lives harder or more expensive. It's quite the opposite. And I think we are going to start to see electoral effects of this, or even if it's not electoral, it will express itself in other ways. I mean, we saw this not just in France with the Gilets jaunes or what we're seeing in the Netherlands with the farmers, but in this country in 2000 with the fuel protests, we had hauliers and farmers blockade refineries and depots, bring the country to an absolute standstill because of the fact that the new Labour government wouldn't cut fuel duty at a time when prices were very high. And ever since, governments have been petrified of raising fuel duty as a consequence. So, you know, these politicians who are convinced that these policies are really popular, who are convinced that people will put up with, as you say, being poorer or colder, they're going to get a rude awakening one way or the other. And if it's not at the ballot box, I think it could easily be in some other more direct form of action.
Yeah, Tom, just finally then, it's not just London, is it? We talk a lot about London in this debate, but actually these clean air zones are popping up in places like Newcastle, for example, too.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a slight bias there and a sort of interest to declare, but we can't exclusively blame Labour just for this particular ULEZ scheme, when actually these schemes are popping up all around the country with different political authorities too.
I think that's exactly right. This isn't just a London-based discussion, not least because so much that's rolled out here suddenly gets rolled out across the country as well. And as you say, also both parties have a role to play in this. It was only last week that central government, i.e. the Tory government, said that we're no longer going to fund low-traffic neighbourhoods and schemes like that, which involve road closures and pushing people off the roads and so on. So the problem is this is one of those issues where the entire political class thinks it's a great idea. They haven't thought it through because they're so cut off from ordinary people. They don't get the idea that this is not going to be popular and it's not going to work. But as we're saying, with the Uxbridge by-election, with these policies really finally starting to bite now, they're going to be woken up from that illusion pretty soon, I think.
Well, Tom Slater, I hope with all of my heart that you are absolutely right. And I've no doubt you'll be chronicling it within the pages of Spiked Online. So thank you very much, Tom Slater, there for joining me. Now, folks, joining me to discuss how they've been personally impacted by Mayor Khan's ULEZ expansion is Rajinder Singh and Pritpal Kaur. Now, thank you very much for your time. How has it personally impacted your family?
My family, first thing, hello to you. My family is affected because I depend on pensioners, pension fund only. I visit school, helping them exercise. I do volunteer work 4 to 5 days for nothing. Only I depend on pensions. And our car is so old. And how can I reach with the things I carry on my cycle or walking on London transport, which is not.
It is actually a narrative, isn't it, that actually Londoners aren't really out and using their cars, that actually all Londoners, are hopping in and out of public transport, whether that be the Underground or DLR or buses, for example, because there are much better transport links in London than there are in other parts of the country. But actually, a hell of a lot of Londoners are still using cars, such as yourself.
Well, because we use this car for the like going to schools, teaching children how to do the hula hoop and the skipping. So we can't really carry our equipment on the buses or on the trains. And our car is really old, which is about 23 years old, and that's going to go into scrapping scheme now. And they're giving us £2,000. That's not going to help me to buy a new car. You see? So there's nothing wrong with my car. So why should I have to pay a lot more money to buy a new car and scrap my old car?
Do you think there's an argument here for saying naff off Sadiq Khan, because actually you would quite like to keep your car and you don't want to be told by the Mayor of London that actually you've got to get rid of your car in order to avoid being whacked with a 12 quid 50 tax, essentially?
Yes, I agree with you. Yes, we should be able to keep our car. It's still running a very good running it's a very it's very reliable.
Yeah.
Now we have to get rid of it because the Mayor of London saying we have to being an old car. But how are we going to afford to buy a new one, which we do need a car? Without a car, we can manage going to schools.
Yeah, I mean, just to play devil's advocate, Sadiq Khan, where he sat here right now, which I'm not sure he would in a hurry, but where he sat here right now, I imagine he'd say, look, this is about saving the lungs of London's children.
Like clean air.
I mean, do you buy that argument? Are you sort of persuaded by that argument at all?
Thinking about clean air, which I understand that,
yeah.
But you're not thinking about the people like us that we can't afford to buy another car. Car prices are so high at the moment, it's just impossible to buy a car. And that's taking away our independence, which we enjoy doing. How are we going to carry on doing what we're doing at the moment without the car?
Yeah.
We can't buy a car for £2,000.
Yeah, it's a lot of money that people are being asked to part with. It really, really is. And I think actually you guys giving us a real-life example of just how much people are being hit in the pocket and actually how many Londoners are really, really worried about this. So Rajinder Singh and Pritpal Kaur, I thank you very much for your time today. Now, Andrew Reborn, I want to know what you think about this.
I think it's very simple. And what's great about this channel is you get real people on and say, how does it impact...
Real Britain.
Well, it is Real Britain. There's a show title there somewhere. What I found extraordinary is 645 billion kilometres, which is what we travelled according to government statistics. 88% done by cars, vans and taxis, is what the statistics actually say. This is a tax on the poor. When you turn around and look at that sort of stuff, who are already suffering with inflation, with mortgage going through the roof and so on and so forth, unable to insulate that roof because of costs involved with that as well. So what we need to do, Uxbridge has already shown that the Labour Party, they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory as a result of it.
Very true.
And what's going to happen, it's going to give the Conservatives, this is why Rishi's out there saying, hurrah, in a way, let's embrace, just start oil, he's going to say. You work on that sort of principle because it's going to turn round and real people are going to say, we can't do this. And it's not just the motorists, it's the impact as well on the shops, on the restaurants and so on and so forth. And we see more and more people in the high street disappearing. You've got Wilko, the tragic news about them and so on and so forth.
About that.
Absolutely. We love Wilko, of course.
I love Wilko.
Big up north.
But I mean, how much do you think actually Rishi Sunak, is he doing enough to actually fight back against...
Well, it's an interesting narrative, and this is why I think it's not just about the clean air, whatever the science is, and there'll be debates about that sort of side. It is a tax on the poor.
Yes.
And you work on that sort of basis, it's rather like parking fines.
Yes.
Certain people need the money so they can pay for other services. So what you need to do is listen to the real people. You turn around and talk about the real impact. It's all right talking about let's extend the scrappage value to £2,000 they've just done. Does that ameliorate it? Well, not really, because they still need their car.
Yeah.
88% of travel is by car. So if you don't have a car, what are you going to do?
Exactly.
And you work on that sort of premise. So I think the reality is that let's talk to the real people. It needs to be revisited. I don't know anybody that I've heard speak about it publicly who genuinely believes ULEZ is a good idea for the reasons cited.
And then the narrative, you know, again, with the net zero debate, and then we come to the ULEZ arguments that Sadiq Khan makes, actually, the data doesn't back up what he's saying, which is that London is getting far, far worse. That actually we're all breathing in toxic air. It's a wonder I made it into the studio from up there in the northeast, because actually London's air is so toxic, according to Mr.
And it's extraordinary because we've all become experts, haven't we? We've all become scientists, we've all become virologists, we're all experts on the Constitution. The reality is we don't know. So all we do is we peddle sound bites, and it's Edward Bernays, the father of PR, who says the best way to sell anything is through fear.
Well, Sadiq Khan's doing a very good job at that. Andrew will be back shortly.